The nightmare in the Bahamas escalates. At least 80 people now confirmed dead, hundreds still missing. 30 people dead. I meant to say 30. And the country's top health official says the final body count could be, according to him, staggering. Morticians are on the ground embalming bodies because they don't have enough coolers to fit all of the storm's victims. We're hearing more and more horrific stories from survivors who were on the Abaco Islands where the storm surge was more than 23 feet and the winds 185 miles an hour, gusting much higher. A man told the Nassau Guardian newspaper he was treading water with his 5-year-old son trying to cling to the roof of their home when a powerful gust blew that young boy into the raging floodwaters. The father says his son was, quote, reaching for me and calling me Daddy as the storm swept him away. Our Steve Harrigan is on the ground, live on Abaco right now. Steve, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Shepard, I'm standing in what used to be somebody's house here on Abaco Island. Just the foundation is left, and really in what used to be somebody's neighborhood. Because as far as I can see behind me, off to the right, off to the left, there is nothing left here. It's as if someone took a snow globe and just shook it over and over again. This is not the kind of hurricane that just tears the roof off a house. It's the kind of hurricane that hit here with 185-mile-per-hour winds for 2 days. You mentioned the body count. That is going to change dramatically because when you stand here, you can smell bodies. I can see dead dogs from where I'm standing, and when I walked with Chris Pontius over that hill to a church there, you could actually see dead bodies protruding from the rocks, bloating and bloody in the sun after several days here. As far as the body collection, we've seen one storage truck which holds bodies, and we've seen police really walk through here with machetes, really guided by a sense of smell, trying to find more bodies. This was a very poor area, a lot of Haitians living in this part of the Bahamas, in this town on Abaco Island. So you get a sense that people didn't know how many people were here. They don't know how many people are gone, and no one really seems to be looking for them very hard. Now, we did see some real acts of compassion and charity at the port. A lot of people from the Bahamas bringing their own private boats. It's almost like a flotilla of desperate people trying to get out of here. They're taking women and children first. Jump on the boat. You can't bring any bags, but at least you can get out of Abaco Island, which for many people here is just a hell with nothing. You ask people, we've seen them pick through these houses here, trying to look for items of value, and you say to them, what do you have? Nothing. What do you mean, nothing? You have absolutely nothing. So when you get in discussions with people sometimes, too, it can get a little heated, very emotional, and certainly people who've lost family members, who've lost houses, and who look around at this landscape, which is completely changed, you can understand that emotion. People basically don't even know where their house was. This is such a jumble at this point, Shepard.
Steve, it's you and Steve Pontius. I don't know your technical limitations, but is it possible for you to just show us around there, the area where you are?
Let's give a slow pan and just try and look at some of what we're seeing here. It's really an entire neighborhood that's gone. This is the worst of it. And you're just seeing foundation after foundation, car after ruined car. And in some of these ruined cars, which have been flipped over and battered, you can actually see people sitting inside because that's the only place they have to sit. You can see people walking down the street, carrying whatever items they have. Gas is in short supply. And you basically, whatever you have you're carrying on your back or in a shopping cart, it's really like scenes out of Mad Max here. All the trees are down. These shipping containers actually were thrown over from the port. So everything is really in a jumble, and the people seem a little bit stunned. And it smells bad here. I mean, as soon as you stand here, you're like, oh, you know, if you've been to Rwanda during the genocide, if you've been to Haiti after the earthquake, you know that smell. And right here on Abaco Island, you have that smell, Shepard.
Steve, I must admit, when I found out that you had made it there today, I was so relieved because you've experienced the things you just talked about for decades. You've been in war zones and in natural disasters. And though we've seen the pictures, we've not been able to get a firsthand account of someone with experience, like to quantify what this is like based on other experiences. And I was hoping maybe you could.
Well, thanks, Shepard. You know, when you see it, it's a lot different. You know, you can read an APY report, oh, there's, bodies everywhere. But when you go up to that Baptist church 500 yards away and you see arms and legs sticking out of those stones, people who were probably trying to take refuge in a church and ended up dead, and they're still sitting there. You get the sense that there's a tremendous lack of urgency, certainly because it's difficult to reach this location, but also because these are the poorest of the poor. They're dead. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows how many they are. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of urgency to try and find their bodies and give them a burial at this point, Shepard.
Not to cast aspersions at all, and with the understanding that the task is monumental, Steve, what's striking to me from hundreds of miles away is that you don't see anyone out there trying to get anything done. Have you been able to figure out if anyone is in charge or when they may be able to get in?
No, I'll tell you, I saw some good things. I saw people getting onto boats and really hustling, and the military keeping people in line, and people trying to escape this because, this is basically a hot tin pan of destruction and dead bodies. So people are just trying to get out of here as fast as they can. We've seen helicopter pilots from the U.S. Coast Guard carrying people off who are either so weak or so traumatized that they can't even walk after this situation. So we have seen heroism, and keep in mind this is a tough place to get to. The airports are down, the harbors have sunken vessels in it, but you're right. For a disaster of this level, it's dead quiet here. No, I'm not trying to make a bad play on words, but you'd think there'd be some movement. You'd think there'd be some bulldozers. You'd think there'd be some activity as things get worse. We hear of these rescue efforts attempting to come from the mainland. From there, it's not far at all by boat over to, say, Fort Lauderdale, Broward and Dade County. You wonder if there isn't. I just can't stop thinking about people who have relatives who are dead in that rubble. Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to talk to people here because, everyone has been through the same situation here. The guy who's driving us around, we found him. And, you're almost hesitant to say, how are you doing? How are you doing? Well, I swam to safety with my wife and 2 children in my arms. He's driving us because he needs some money right now, but he's been through hell. And just about everybody here has. We're just seeing them, walk and pick through and see what they can find here. I mean, I'm looking at some old clothes, some toilets, some loose shoes, but we've seen a lot of hurricanes, we've seen a lot of storms, but to see it jumbled like this, basically turned upside down, is a different level of destruction, and it's hard to see how this gets back to any sense of normalcy here for some time to come, Shepard.
You were over in Nassau, and I know there's sort of mounting efforts from there. Is there a flotilla that's going to be able to come, or I'm trying to get a sense of how the future might be better in some way, at least to clean it up and bury people.
I think we've spoken to some people here on the ground who have really expressed their gratitude to the U.S. Coast Guard, whose pilots have been flying around the clock to airlift the sickest and the weakest and the most injured out of here. That being said, at the hospital over here, there's still a lot of people whose medications have run out, and there's not enough helicopters taking them in and out. So we've also seen volunteerism from Bahamians bringing their boats, throwing food up on shore, and taking people on board. But the need is huge, and the need is dramatic. It's just too quiet. These people are too desperate, and we've seen how this story plays out. When people don't have food, don't have water, things can spiral badly quickly. And I get the real sense here that help is on the way. It's not as urgent as anyone would like, but we saw people mapping out the floor of the ocean near the port. So I expect we're going to see larger ships in. I expect we're going to see planes in on the runway. But right now, let's stick with what we're seeing. We're seeing 0 here. We're seeing a few helicopters, and we're seeing dead bodies, arms and legs still protruding 6 days after a storm, Shepard.
Steve Harrigan and our photographer, Chris Pontius, both veterans of this, showing us what we knew was coming, but it's just so much more difficult to see it once it's there. To all of those who have family members there, man, deepest condolences, and we'll keep bringing the stories. There's nobody better to do it than Steve Harrigan.